Gospel is written in the 12th chapter of St. John, beginning at the first verse. "6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, 'Why is this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?' He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And he kept a common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, 'Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me.'" Herein is the gospel lesson. Please be seated. Almost every crime there is in the book is an odious crime. But it seems to me that one of the most odious is kidnapping. Kidnapping, particularly of children, is unbelievable. But kidnapping of adults can be very trying, a very difficult time for the person kidnapped. So with that in the background, I remember, and it's been some time now, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but there was a corporate executive in the Midwest who was kidnapped. And his wife got a ransom note for $100,000 for his safe return. Now the police law officers said, "Don't even deal with him, don't respond to this, because that'll just encourage more kidnapping." But his wife was, I guess, sort of creative, and she decided to negotiate with the criminals. And back and forth he went with them. And what happened is that they settled not for $100,000, but for $30,000. Which point the executive was released. It had a very happy ending. The criminals were caught. The $30,000 was retrieved and given back to the family, and everybody kind of lived happily ever after. But it made me think, and I guess a newspaper person who reported this made him think too, what in the world was his wife doing? And how was she negotiating? Was negotiating on a kidnapping request the same as going and buying a bunch of bananas? What did she say? "I'm going home to think it over"? Or $100,000 for him? You gotta be kidding. He's balding. He's kind of soft in the stomach. He's lived 3/4 of his year. He can't be worth $100,000. Make me 10. And somehow they settled on 30,000. They were becoming rookie kidnappers too. And then I was thinking, if I was kidnapped, would those people who are close to me start negotiating? Well, let me think about it. Haggle the price? I think maybe at that time I'd ask them to be a little extravagant. There is a time for extravagance. And extravagance is the topic of our sermon this morning in terms of the gospel lesson. The gospel lesson, I think a lot of you are familiar with. Jesus is in the last days of his life. He comes to visit at the home of Martha and Mary and Lazarus. And he had raised Lazarus from the dead not too long before that. He was bent on going to Jerusalem to suffer and give his life as a ransom for many, an extravagance of love. And he stops and is a guest at the household of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And what happens is that Mary takes out a perfume called nard, and that was something that they used to prepare the body for burial. It was extremely expensive. Judas claims it's worth 300 denarii, and I think one of the biblical commentators said it was the equivalent of a year's salary. And Mary had bought this for herself and decided at this point to take it and to use it to anoint the feet of Jesus, to show honor and appreciation and love. And Judas Iscariot says, why is she wasting this stuff? And you, Jesus, you who have been so honest for dealing gently with the poor, why couldn't we take this money and use it and give it to the poor? And in the Matthew concept of this story, the disciples are all in agreement. Should have been given to the poor. And Jesus seems uncharacteristic at this point. And he says, the poor you always have with you, but me, you won't have me very much longer. And she's doing it out of an extravagance of love, so get off her back. And that's the story. Mary becomes the model for us. That sometimes we have to plan carefully, and sometimes out of love we ought to respond with a lot of extravagance. In the case of John, he talks about the act of Mary as preparing him for his crucifixion and death. But it's a response done out of love, out of unfathomable love, unrestricted love. There are times that we need to be good planners, and there's sometimes we need to be responsive. And Mary becomes the model of that time when extravagance becomes the only real response that we should have. Lillejord, in a book called House of Her Own, talks about a party they went to, a birthday party. And they sat down and they watched the woman, and she talked about her dream house. She had all the papers there, the description of the house. And the sad part of it was that this woman was at her 82nd birthday. She was in the nursing home. She'd been planning her dream house for 50 years. And everybody knew that she was not going to ever build this house. That time had passed. There might have been many reasons why she didn't build her dream house, but maybe there were a lot of times when she looked at it and thought of reckless extravagance and decided, I'm not going to do it. And her dream house always became just some drawings on this piece of paper. Hugh Drennan talks about a man in a major city that used to come to the church he was pastor at. And he came in every day. That's when churches were open all the time. He came in every day and sat before a beautiful stained glass window. Didn't seem like he had a lot of money. But he was mesmerized by the painting of Christ on the wall and the announcement of his sacrifice, of his abundant love. Day by day he went and simply worshiped at the foot of this stained glass window. When he passed away, they found out that he had saved a substantial amount of money, and he dedicated to the eternal upkeep of the window. When it came to the council meeting, one of the council said, "We need money for an organ. We don't need it for a stained glass window." Another said, "Well, we need a child care center, and this would be a good start to that child care center." One said, "Give it to the homeless." Fortunately, the council got their thoughts together and decided what it had been dedicated for was an act of love, kind of an extravagant love. And maybe this picture of Christ's death would be the exact sermon someone needed, because it was a gift of extreme extravagance. They said, let it be given for what brought him into a relationship with Christ. Why did Mary squander the gift? Could it have been better used for the poor? It seemed that Jesus was just out of character here, but it wasn't at all. He saw that this gift was of gratitude. Perhaps it was from the friendship that they had over the years. Maybe it was in gratitude for bringing her brother back to life. And maybe she has some inside information that Jesus is making this tremendous sacrifice for her. And she didn't know how else to show her deep love and response other than take this priceless piece of merchandise that she had and use it to anoint Jesus' feet. So the question is, today, as we travel through the Lenten season, do you understand the extravagant sacrifice that Christ has made for you? And then in response, what is the extreme extravagance that we are going to do for him? Not too long ago, there was a major shooting in a school. A teacher got between the armed man and a child who was one of her class and took the bullet and died for her. She didn't have to think about it. It was just a response of caring, of extreme sacrifice, of just doing it without cost, without thought for the cost. One of the most beautiful stories, short stories, was written by William Sloane Porter. He was called O. Henry. He used the name O. Henry because he wanted to shield himself because he was under indictment for stealing money from a bank in Texas. But O. Henry wrote many short stories, received many awards. But the greatest story he wrote was called The Gift of Magi. And it talks about a young couple, very poor, who were celebrating their first Christmas together. The woman had one prize that she prized above all things, and that was her long hair. The young man had only one piece of a watch that was a treasure of the family and had been an heirloom. It was something he treasured about everything else, but he did not have a chain for it. His wife was afraid that she'd he'd lose it. And so when Christmas Day came, the man came with certain stuff for her hair so it could be displayed more beautifully. It was the thing she treasured. And then as she took a towel off her head, found out that she had had her hair cut so she could get enough money to buy a chain for his pocket watch. O. Henry wrote it better than I tell it. But it's a beautiful story of people, because they love, are willing to share extravagantly. Sometimes, I guess, we're criticized for upkeeping this beautiful building of church. I'm sure some people could say you could use the money that you're spending for the poor, and it could be. But Jesus tells us today in the story is a time for extravagance. And if this church can be a light to people and bring them to Christ because they see it advertised and it's so many times in newspapers or online, people have found it to be such a beautiful expression of the love of Christ. The bikers around here say this is the meeting point. This is the point at which they know they're in the right place. The church can only be reckless in its extravagance if those of you who are members, those of us who are members, reflect the grace and love of God, not only in our upkeep of a building, but in the care that we show for each other and our community and our world. William Barclay said, love is not love if it's calculated. If you calculate the cost, that's not love. Love gives all, and its only regret is that it cannot give more. The lesson of Mary anointing Jesus' feet today is a study in extravagance, criticized by one of his own people. But Jesus defended it. If you love, you will give, sometimes just impulsively. Amen. The sermon, The Old Rugged Cross, 153 in your blue hymnal. Please stand as you are able.